Okay, so how many of you actually know who Vegfund is, even if you just met me yesterday or today? You guys, okay, so I'll just explain it. My name's Amanda, by the way, and I work for Vegfund. Okay, so what we do is basically our mission is probably the same as many of you have, that our goal is to have a vegan world and to encourage more people to make vegan choices. But we don't do our own outreach. The way that we work towards our mission is by supporting and funding other people that are already doing vegan activism. So these are our main programs: food sampling, video outreach, and merit awards. And I'm going to talk about those in terms of the topic of this talk. So I'm just going to move to the next one. And basically, what I mean by a little bit of money making a big difference is I'm talking about cost effectiveness. So there are a lot of different types of goals you can have when you're doing activism, obviously, and cost effectiveness might not be the first one that springs to mind. You might be thinking that you want to encourage as many people as possible to go vegan, but we find that with most types of activism, this is really difficult to measure, and in a lot of cases, it's just impossible. It can be very expensive too. So an easy thing to measure is a focus on a low per person cost. So you want to see how you can reach the most people for the lowest cost. And my credibility for giving this talk is that we've worked with like thousands of activists all over the world doing all different types of activism. So we sort of learned some things about best practices, and I'm going to talk about some of the things we've learned today. Okay, so these are just some general tips that apply to basically everything, and they probably mostly sound like common sense, but they're not necessarily things people are thinking about when you're worried about putting on an event and running around getting everything done. And especially if you're a beginner, you might just, sometimes you don't think about all of these things. So the first thing is that you should always ask for donations and discounts for whatever types of expenses you have. And this can be everything from, like, if you're buying food from a for-profit company, there are a lot of reasons that they might give you a donation or discount. First of all, it makes them look good, and it also is sort of like free advertising for them. This applies to nonprofits. For example, if you're buying leaflets from a nonprofit, they want their logo and their website to get out there. So if they know that you're doing a really good event, they might give it to you at a steep discount, and sometimes they'll just donate it to you. And this applies to companies too. Vegan companies might actually be emotionally interested in promoting veganism, so that's one reason they might want to help you. But they also, then they get to say that they're supporting the vegan community and just giving away food and things like that, so it makes them look good. Okay, and then the next thing, this is the most obvious one, but you should always compare prices. This also applies to everything, and a lot of people will just sort of buy the first thing that they find that meets their needs. But I'm not saying you should get something that's really bad quality or something that you find unethical, but you should definitely see if you can find something that meets your needs at a lower cost when you're thinking about cost effectiveness and using charitable money, obviously. And then this is something that a lot of people don't think about. People tend to buy, especially beginner activists, they tend to buy more than they need. So if you're having an event and you have to buy a venue, you don't want to pay for a venue that holds like 500 people if you can only get 50. And a lot of times beginner activists, they can only get a very small amount of people. So if you're doing a first event, a good place might be a church or a library, because they often will give you space for a very low nominal cost. And then you don't have to worry that you're not going to fill it up. And that also applies to food. You should think about how much experience you have and how well you're promoting the event. And then you might be able to, you might think you need like 500 food samples, the same as the venue example, but you might only get 50 people. So think about a reasonable expectation for the number of people, and then don't buy an excessive amount of food, because then it will just go to waste. And the last thing that you want to think about is when you have people at a particular event or even just at a table somewhere, wherever you are, you want to give them as many opportunities to follow up as possible so that they're not just getting the one-time exposure, but they will actually take that with them and learn something later on. So an easy thing is just to hand them a leaflet, because then they have a website to go to and they have more information to read later, because they might just be walking by for 1 second. And another thing you can do, though, if you have a group, it's great to be able to invite them to join your group. Or even if you just have like a card with your email address, and you can tell them, if you have any questions about veganism that you think of later, you can just email me any questions. Okay, so that's a good thing to remember. Our first program that I'm going to talk about is food sampling. I like this picture as a good example of what food sampling should look like, particularly in a country like the US or the UK, where this is the type of food that will attract people. In some cultures, it's a little different. But the top part is universal. You want to be smiling. You don't want to be scowling at people because it's not going to attract them. And this is obviously the type of food that would attract people when they see a sign that says free vegan food. Even though it says vegan, if they see cupcakes, they're going to want it. Whereas if you're giving out carrot sticks or something like that, they're probably not going to come to your table. And the main thing to remember for food sampling events in order to be cost effective is to give out small bite-sized samples or drinks in these little tiny cups like this. So remember that a lot of people want to give out a whole vegan feast with a lot of different kinds of foods and a full serving, but remember that your goal is just to teach them something about veganism. So probably you want to teach them either that vegan food doesn't taste horrible, like vegan meats don't taste horrible, vegan cupcakes don't taste horrible, because that's what a lot of people think. And to do that, you only need to give them a very small sample. So these are some examples. Those are little vegan ice cream sandwiches that are cut in half. This is obviously vegan chocolate almond milk. And then this is just some assorted samples, cheeses and meats on toothpicks. So that's what it should look like. And usually 1 to 3 different items is a good amount. Usually 1 non-dairy milk and 2 different types of foods, maybe 1 dessert and 1 vegan meat. And again, you would want to include information with it. Like here, they're giving out different types of leaflets. Somebody's reading it. So they get the food and then they get the information about why to be vegan. Okay. And before I finish this part, has anybody here actually done a food sampling before? You have? Okay. And is the rest of you interested in doing a food sampling maybe? Okay, cool. This is an example of an effective food sampling. This is from Brazil. It's a group called the Brazilian Vegetarian Society, and they do several different events per month in different parts of Brazil. And a good thing that they do is that they pair an educational lecture like this one with their food sampling every time. So, and it's geared all towards non-vegans, so they promote it to the general public, and it's mostly non-vegans that come. They get information about veganism in the form of this presentation, and then they get to try vegan food. And pictured here, they have little mini vegan quiches and chickpea burgers. So they do a good job with that. Something to aspire to. Okay, the next program that I'm going to talk about is video outreach. Does everybody here know what pay-per-view is? So for anyone who doesn't know, it's when you show a 4-minute animal cruelty video to teach people the realities of their food choices. And as you can see, the reactions are usually very intense. People cry. A lot of people say they want to go vegan on the spot. So videos are really effective. And you can offer people £1 or $1 to watch the videos. But in terms of Vegfund, outside of the US, we reimburse for vegan treats. So what you would do here in the UK or in Europe or anywhere else is you would offer a vegan treat like a cupcake or a slice of cake in exchange for watching the video. Okay, these are just 2 examples. This one is from Denmark and this one's from Poland. And the 2 things that you want to think about for this is, again, offering additional information and also choosing the best value venue. So that means you want to find a place where you can rent a stall that's going to be a very low cost but have a lot of foot traffic. Obviously, that's easier said than done. But for example, in the US, we usually look for a stall that costs around $150 but can reach 1,000 people. That's a really good, cost-effective place to do this. Sometimes people are able to do outreach on the streets and they don't have to pay for that if it's considered free speech, but I'm not sure if that's the case in the UK, but that's something that you might look into. And additional information and support can, again, be all the same things that I said before. And I'm going to show you one example. This is a group from France called L214, and they do a really creative thing. This is like a busy public square. They do this in multiple cities in France. I'm not sure where this one is. It might be Paris, but they set up these mini VegFests where they invite different animal rights groups in France to participate, and then they all have different vegan information and food. And one of the things that they've done is a pay-per-view, which we help fund. So they have the pay-per-view here. As you can see, they offer a slice of cake to watch the video, and then they have other food that they sell, but the cake is given away for the videos. And they usually get about 100 to 150 people to watch the video every time they do it, which is a few times a month. So. Okay, and we also do documentary screenings of vegan documentaries. And this is one place where accurately estimating attendance is very important. A lot of the documentary licensing fees, such as Cowspiracy, they'll charge you a different fee based on how big your audience is going to be. So you want to make sure that you don't overestimate. They have a different price for under 50 people, under 100 people versus 500 people or something like that. So you want to make sure you're not paying too much. And the same goes for venue. See, this is a picture of a good screening where they filled up the venue. But if you rent a large cinema room, that's obviously going to be much more expensive than, like I said, a library with a projector. And if it's your first event, that's probably a more realistic type of place. And the second thing is promote well to get the full benefit. So obviously that's about filling up the venue. You can do that by posting flyers in different places. We recommend health food stores and gyms and similar places where people are not necessarily vegan, but might be more interested in veganism than just people on the streets and everything like that. But we don't recommend promoting it directly to vegans because then you're just preaching to the choir. And the final thing for screenings that you want to keep in mind is having a Q&A or an expert talk at the end is a great thing. Expert talks usually will cost money. People will want money for their time. So we recommend, if you don't have a large budget, that you would just do a vegan Q&A yourself. And that means, if you've been vegan for a year or more, you're kind of an expert on veganism. So you can just say after the screening, if anybody has questions about veganism, come up and ask, and you'll answer with a microphone similar to this. And that will, of course, add value. If you have vegan food on hand, that's also good. We can help reimburse for that if you're doing a screening with food samples. And so then people will sort of learn the hows and whys at the same time. This is just an example of a good screening that is from Estonia. This is actually 4 different screenings that they did. They did 2 screenings of, it was speciesism and vegucated in 2 different cities. And as you can see, they filled up their venues. They had expert talks at the end, and it was in a busy location. And they also had vegan food. So that was a good event. And then another program that we have that a lot of people don't know about is online advertising. This is something that if you have a lot of time, it's a very cost-effective way of advocating veganism because it reaches a lot of people at a low cost, and we can help fund these ads. So the way it works is that you would design an ad that has a unique angle, and you would also have a web page it would go to. So these ads would be posted on Facebook or somewhere like that. People will see them, depending, for example, this one says dog lovers, click if you love your furry friend and learn how to help other animals. So that might be targeted. On Facebook, you can target ads, for example, to people that have dogs listed as one of their likes on Facebook. And they will click on that. It will go to a website that has the 4-minute animal cruelty video that shows the cruelties of factory farming. And then it has also ways to follow up so that they can request a vegan starter kit, for example, or they can join a group if the website belongs to a group and things like that. This is just an example of a landing page. This one is for Hindi speakers in India. And we have, obviously the ads are targeted on Facebook to that. This is what the page looks like. That's the video in the big part there. On the right side over there is where they can request a vegan starter kit. And then this group also has a Facebook page and a Twitter in Hindi, so people can follow up with that way too. Okay, so this is just to give you an idea of the impact of this program. The comments are usually really intense. This one says, "I just became a vegan." A lot of them say things like that. We don't know if it lasts, but we can't really measure that, like I said. But it does make people do that. A lot of people also comment that it made them cry or made them feel sick. So people have really intense reactions to these videos. And this is more effective than the pay-per-views on the streets because it reaches a really huge amount of people. And this is statistics for 1 year that we had. 38 million people clicked on the ads. A lot more people saw the ads, but this is the number of people that actually clicked on it and went to the website. And then out of those people who watched the video, over 1 million clicked on the link to receive a vegan starter kit. So they are interested after they see it. Well, yeah, okay, that one just came up. Yeah, that's just an example of people, intense reactions. I feel like I'm gonna cry. I'm going vegan and it's going to help me improve at basketball. Never eating meat again. So just some of the basics. I already touched on some of these, but like I said, it's a very, very cost-effective form of activism, but it is a lot of work, so you have to have a lot of time and be willing to put the time into it. And a good campaign of this would target a specific audience and have a call to action. Like I said, usually the call to action would be a link to click on a vegetarian starter kit, vegan starter kit. The one thing you want to be careful with is using graphic footage. Sometimes we have had issues with Facebook, particularly when the ad is showing like a nice dog or something like that, and then the link goes to like a graphic video. Facebook says that's misleading advertising, so you might want to watch out for that because they do shut down accounts and they don't always tell you why. And then if you're doing that also, you're gonna wanna use metrics to refine your strategy. So like I said, it can be targeted to people who are interested in dogs. You can also target by age, by country, by language. So you might want to try out different types of targeting and see what gives you more clicks and refine it and see how you can get better results. And then Merit Awards is kind of our catch-all miscellaneous program, and we're open to all kinds of ideas as long as it's promoting veganism to non-vegans. And this is just from a VegFest. So VegFests are one of the things that fall under this category, but also things that we might not have even heard of or thought of. We're interested in everything. So if you have any ideas, you can come talk to me after this. We'll have a lot of time. This is just, again, a review of everything I said for the general thing because Merit Awards is such a large category, and a lot of times it's a long-term planning process with a lot of different things to worry about, so I can't really cover everything. But I'm going to talk about a VegFest as an example. A VegFest has a lot of different expenses. The most biggest expense would usually be the venue cost. Usually they will rent out big venues, will cost thousands of pounds. And a good thing to do, well, one way that they can save money is by, they want to obviously get a lot of different sponsors and companies, but small festivals can't really do that. A lot of times companies are not going to want to travel for a small festival. But if you ask them for food donations, that's one way you can get free food to give out as samples. And a lot of companies always want to give out their samples as long as you're going to give out coupons and things like that. And when you're buying space, you can also ask if there's a nonprofit rate. That's one thing that a lot of people don't think of, but particularly if you're renting a stall at a farmer's market or any type of festival, they usually have a different price for for nonprofits and companies. So I forgot to say that before, that's not really VegFest. And then again, a VegFest should be really well promoted. That's a huge event, but it goes for everything. And don't buy more than you reasonably expect to need. So that's the same thing with the space again. Large VegFests will buy very large spaces, like this one, for example. But some people, there are very small vegan festivals that are hosted in, for example, the gymnasium of a school or something like that. And that's much better if you know that you can't get thousands of people to attend. Offer as many types of information and support as possible. A VegFest is a great example of that because they usually have foods to try. They have all different types of organizations that people can get involved with. And a lot of times they have screenings and talks so people can learn more while they're there and then take information with them. And this applies to merit award type of projects as well as the online advertising. For anything that's like a long-term project or something that you're going to do more than once, you want a way to measure the outcome so that you can refine your strategy and make changes the next time you do it and see if you can get better results. One way that we have VegFests that do surveys, there's one VegFest out of New England that they take people's emails by offering a raffle ticket, a free raffle ticket in the beginning. And then they don't spam people, but they send one email asking if people are willing to take a survey. And they just ask them, like, were you vegetarian or vegan before this? And did it encourage you to make changes to your diet and things like that? So you can see if you're actually having an impact. And this is an example of a really good VegFest. This one is from Croatia. They promote their events really, really well, and they have it in this big, huge city center. And like a lot of people are just going through, but they stop because the food and everything that's going on there is interesting. They got like tens of thousands of people to stop by their stalls at that VegFest. And the guy on the left is the president, so he even like stopped by. And I think the mayor of their city stopped by too. And I think that the way that they did that was by garnering press coverage. That's not really my area of expertise, but if you can get free advertising by doing something really interesting and that the public is going to like and get the media interested, make a press release, that can be a really effective way of getting a lot of people in your city interested in it. So if you are interested in any of our grant programs that I mentioned, or anything that I haven't mentioned that you just have ideas about, you can visit our website at vegfund.org. We have our guidelines and more information and tips listed there, as well as our online application. And you can also contact us through there, or if you want, I can give you my email after this talk. And just briefly to go over our model so that you don't get surprised when you go to the website, we do operate on a reimbursement model. So you have to front all the costs and you have to apply ahead of time and get approved. We don't fund every type of expense, but if we approve you, you host your event and follow our guidelines, submit receipts and photos, we'll reimburse the costs that you were approved for.